I gave Marcus everything: my time, my support, my heart, while he built his empire. For 5 years, I believed I was his future. Then I watched from the shadows as he placed a ring on her finger. The woman who would become Mrs. Bennet wasn't me. I used to think that love stories had happy endings, that if you loved someone enough, supported their dreams, and stood by them through the hard times, they'd choose you in the end. But sometimes, the person you build with isn't building with you. They're just using your bricks to construct a foundation for someone else. My name is Jasmine. 5 years ago, I met a man named Marcus Reynolds at a coffee shop near the community college where I was finishing my business degree. He wasn't a millionaire back then, just an ambitious guy with big dreams, a dazzling smile, and a way of looking at me that made me feel like I was the only woman in the room. I fell for him instantly, not because of what he had, but because of what I saw he could become. For 5 years, I was there. When his first business failed, I stayed up with him until 3 a.m., brainstorming new ideas. When he couldn't make rent, I picked up extra shifts at the hospital where I worked. When his mother got sick, I was the one who drove her to chemo treatments while he was securing investors. I believed in him when nobody else did. I saw his potential before the world recognized his genius. And then one day, it happened. The breakthrough, the investment that changed everything. Suddenly, Marcus wasn't just Marcus anymore. He was Mr. Reynolds, the tech entrepreneur, the rising star, the millionaire with the Midas touch. Our life transformed overnight. We moved from our cramped one-bedroom to a penthouse downtown. His calendar filled with meetings, galas, networking events. I was proud. So proud that sometimes I didn't notice how he introduced me at these events. This is Jasmine, never his girlfriend, never his partner, just Jasmine. I told myself it didn't matter what he called me. I knew what we had built together. I knew what we meant to each other. Or at least, I thought I did. Until I saw the Instagram post. Marcus on one knee, sliding a diamond ring onto another woman's finger. A woman I'd never even heard him mention. The caption read, "She said yes. Can't wait to make you Mrs. Reynolds." The world I thought we were building together shattered in an instant. 5 years of my life, my love, my sacrifices, my dreams. All of it, given to a man who gave his last name to someone else. That moment broke me, but it also became the beginning of something new, something unexpected, something that, looking back now, I can almost be grateful for. Stay with me as I share how loving the wrong person taught me to finally love myself. This story might save your heart from the same fate, because the truth is, sometimes the people we help climb to the top aren't planning to bring us with them, and sometimes the greatest love story isn't the one you have with someone else. It's the one you finally have with yourself. That coffee shop where I first met Marcus was called The Daily Grind. Ironic, right? I had no idea how prophetic that name would be. I was studying for my business ethics final. Textbooks sprawled across the table. Third cup of coffee going cold beside me. That's when he walked in. He wasn't polished like he is now. His shoes were worn, his jacket had a small tear at the elbow, but there was something magnetic about him. The way he carried himself like he already knew where he was going. He spilled his coffee on my notes. Clumsy, apologetic, charming. I should have been annoyed, but when he offered to buy me dinner to make up for it, I said yes. That dinner turned into a 4-hour conversation. Marcus told me about his dreams of starting a tech company that would revolutionize renewable energy. His eyes lit up when he talked about it, hands gesturing wildly as he explained concepts I barely understood. But I got him. I understood the hunger, the drive. I had the same fire in me. We were inseparable after that. Two dreamers with nothing but ambition and each other. Most couples went to movies. We went to tech conferences. Other couples exchanged gifts. We exchanged business books and highlighted our favorite passages. It wasn't conventional romance, but it felt real. It felt like we were building something together. What I loved most about Marcus back then was how he valued my opinion. He'd call me at midnight to ask what I thought about his business model. He'd scribble notes while I talked about market strategies I was learning in class. "You're brilliant, Jazz," he'd say. "When I make it, it'll be because of you, too." I believed him, every word. We had these rituals, Sunday morning coffee on our tiny balcony, dreaming out loud about the future. "When we make it," he'd say, "we'll buy a house with a view of the ocean." Notice that "we." That's what I clung to, that small word with massive implications. We, United States, together. Looking back, I can see the warning signs. The way he'd take my ideas, but never mention my contribution to others. How he'd introduce me to potential investors as his good luck charm rather than his partner or girlfriend. The times he'd dismiss my concerns about our relationship with, "Baby, I'm just focused on making us secure right now. Everything else can wait." But love is the most powerful filter. It colors everything you see. Through my love-filtered vision, his ambition wasn't self-serving, it was for our future. His emotional distance wasn't neglect, it was concentration. His vagueness about our relationship status wasn't hesitation, it was just timing. I remember the night he got his first small investment, $50,000, from an angel investor who believed in his prototype. We celebrated in our apartment with takeout Chinese food and cheap champagne. He picked me up and spun me around, whispering, "We're on our way, Jazz." This is just the beginning. I felt like the luckiest woman alive that night. The champagne, the dreams, his arms around me. I was intoxicated by all of it. That night, as he slept beside me, I wrote in my journal, "This is what it feels like to choose right, to love someone who's going somewhere and wants to take you along for the ride." I had no idea then that I was just the vehicle he was using to get to his destination, not the passenger he planned to keep. They say success changes people. That's not entirely true. Success doesn't change people, it reveals them. And as Marcus climbed, I got to see who he really was, one rung at a time. That first investment was just the beginning. Within 6 months, Marcus secured a spot in a prestigious tech accelerator program. I was still working at the hospital, picking up night shifts so we could afford the rent while he focused on building his company. "It's just temporary," he'd assure me. "Once we get the next round of funding, you can quit and maybe even join the company." Another promise I held on to like a lifeline. I remember the day his prototype was featured in a major tech magazine. He called me, voice breathless with excitement. I rushed to the nearest newsstand during my lunch break, bought 5 copies, and stood there in my scrubs, tears streaming down my face as I read the article. There was his name in print. There was his face, his invention. What the article didn't mention was the nights I stayed up with him troubleshooting problems, the paychecks I sacrificed so he could buy necessary equipment, the countless times I convinced him not to give up when investors said no. As his profile rose, our world expanded. Suddenly, we were being invited to industry parties, networking events, dinners with potential investors. I bought dresses I couldn't afford, learned to talk confidently about technology I was still trying to understand. I wanted to fit into this new world he was creating. I needed to belong there because it was becoming increasingly clear that this world was where he belonged. The first time I noticed the change was at one of these events. A venture capitalist asked Marcus about his support system. "I've been lucky," he said. "Great mentors, supportive investors." He never mentioned me. Standing right beside him, holding his drink, smiling that perfect supportive partner smile, and I was invisible. Later, when I brought it up, he kissed my forehead and said, "Babe, they don't care about my personal life. They care about the business." His company grew. 5 employees became 15, a small office downtown. Late nights turned into missed weekends. Texts went unanswered for hours, then days. "Building something big requires sacrifice," he'd say, when I expressed my loneliness. And I believed him, because I believed in him, in us, in the dream we were supposed to be chasing together. The distance between us wasn't just emotional, it became physical too. Suddenly, there were business trips I wasn't invited on. Conferences in San Francisco, meetings in New York. "It's just business, Jas," he'd say when I asked to come along. "You'd be bored. Plus, you have work." The same work I had been planning to leave once we made it. I started to feel like a secret. When we went out with his new business associates, he introduced me by name only, never clarifying our relationship. When photos were taken at events, he stood just far enough away that we didn't appear as a couple. I told myself I was being paranoid, that he was just focused, professional. There was a moment, I remember it clearly, when I realized something fundamental had shifted. We were at his company's first major launch party. I'd spent weeks helping plan it, down to the last detail. As everyone raised their glasses for the toast, Marcus thanked his team, his investors, even the caterer. But not me. Not once. As applause erupted around us, I caught his eye across the room. He smiled, but it was different, like he was looking at a stranger, or worse, like he was looking at someone he'd outgrown. That night, I cried in the bathroom of our new apartment, the one I rarely saw him in anymore. When I came out, eyes swollen, he was already asleep, or pretending to be. I couldn't tell anymore which parts of him were real and which were performance. All I knew was that as he climbed higher, the view of us together seemed to matter less and less to him. They say there's a moment when everything changes. For us, it was the day Marcus closed his Series B funding round, $30 million. The headlines called him a visionary, an innovator, a rising star in clean tech. Overnight, he wasn't just successful, he was wealthy. The kind of wealth that transforms not just your bank account, but your entire reality. I was at work when the news broke. A colleague showed me the article on her phone. Reynolds Energy secures $30 million in funding round. There was Marcus in a tailored suit I'd never seen before, standing between two venture capitalists, champagne glass raised high. I called him immediately. Straight to voicemail, I texted, "I'm so proud of you, can't wait to celebrate." 3 hours later, he replied, "Thanks. Late meeting tonight. Don't wait up." That night, I sat alone in our apartment, the sleek downtown penthouse we'd moved into 3 months earlier. It still didn't feel like home. Half the boxes remained unpacked, and the furniture was mostly his choice. Minimalist, expensive, impersonal. I opened a bottle of wine and scrolled through social media, where I saw more photos from the funding announcement. That's when I noticed her, standing just behind Marcus in several photos. Tall, elegant, perfectly polished, her hand resting briefly on his arm in one shot. Nothing inappropriate, nothing I could point to and say, "This is wrong." But there was something in the way they stood together, a familiarity, a comfort. She looked like she belonged there, in a way I no longer felt I did. Her name was Vanessa Carter. I learned that from the photo tags. Director of Marketing at Reynolds Energy, a position I didn't even know existed at his company. When I asked Marcus about her the next morning, his response was casual. Too casual. "Yeah, we brought her on about a month ago. She's great, has connections to all the right people." A month ago, a whole person in his daily life for a month, and he'd never once mentioned her. After the funding round, everything accelerated. Marcus was rarely home. When he was distracted, always on his phone, always 1 foot out the door. "It's a critical time, Jas," he'd say. "The investors expect results." I understood pressure. I'd been working 60-hour weeks for years to support us. What I didn't understand was the distance that was growing between us, stretching like a chasm I couldn't figure out how to cross. I tried everything. Planned romantic dinners he'd cancel at the last minute. Bought lingerie that remained unworn. Suggested weekend getaways that were perpetually postponed. I even applied for a position at his company, thinking maybe if we worked together again, we'd reconnect. It wouldn't look right, he told me. People might think you got the job because of our relationship. Our relationship, the one he never acknowledged in public anymore. One night, desperate to feel connected to him again, I surprised him at his office. It was late, around 10 p.m. I brought his favorite takeout, thinking we could have dinner together like we used to. When the elevator opened to his floor, I heard laughter. Marcus and Vanessa sitting close together in the conference room, surrounded by empty wine glasses and presentation boards. Nothing explicitly inappropriate, just two people clearly comfortable with each other, sharing an intimacy that used to be ours. They didn't see me. I stood there for a moment, food growing cold in my hands, watching them through the glass. Then I turned around and went home. When Marcus finally came in at midnight, I asked where he'd been. Working, he said. Just that. No mention of Vanessa, of wine, of laughter. That was the first time he lied directly to my face. It wouldn't be the last. The gaslighting started shortly after. My concerns were dismissed as insecurity. My questions labeled as paranoia. You're imagining things, he'd say. Vanessa is a colleague. That's all. But then came the business trips they took together, the late-night strategy sessions, the inside jokes I wasn't part of. Each time I raised my suspicions, he made me feel crazy for having them. I started doubting myself. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe this was just what success looked like, separate lives, growing apart. One night, after yet another cancelled date, I found myself staring in the bathroom mirror, barely recognizing the woman looking back at me. Eyes constantly on the verge of tears. Face thin from skipped meals. When had I become this person? This anxious, uncertain shadow of myself? And for what? For a man who couldn't even look me in the eye anymore when he said he loved me? It was a Tuesday morning, ordinary in every way. I woke up alone. Marcus had been in Seattle for a critical investor meeting since Saturday. I made coffee, scrolled through my phone, and there it was. A post from one of Marcus's business partners. Congratulations to the future Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds. And below it, the photo that shattered my world. Marcus on one knee, sliding a diamond ring onto Vanessa's finger. The Seattle skyline behind them. The same Seattle where he was supposedly attending meetings. My coffee mug slipped from my hand. Hot liquid splashed across my feet, but I barely felt it. My body went numb as my mind raced, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The caption said they'd been together for 8 months. 8 months. All those late nights. All those business trips. All those times he looked me in the eye and told me I was imagining things. I called him immediately. No answer. I texted. I saw the engagement photo. Call me now. 3 excruciating hours later, my phone rang. I still remember every word of that conversation. I was going to tell you when I got back, he said, his voice eerily calm. 8 months, Marcus. You've been with her for 8 months. We live together. We've been together for 5 years. It's complicated, Jasmine. Vanessa and I, we connect on a different level. She understands the business, the pressure I'm under. And I don't. I've supported you from day one. Before the money, before anyone believed in you. I was there. There was a pause, then words that cut deeper than any knife could. That's the problem, Jazz. You knew me before. Vanessa knows me now. She fits into my life as it is today, not as it was. I screamed. I cried. I demanded explanations that never really came. How could he do this? How could he live a double life? How could he lie to me for so long? His answers were corporate, rehearsed. I didn't mean for it to happen. I still care about you. I never wanted to hurt you. Empty words from a man who had become a stranger. The next few days passed in a blur. Marcus sent movers to collect his remaining things from our apartment that I learned was only in his name, despite my contributions to the rent. He offered me money to help with the transition. Like I was an employee being let go, not a woman whose life he'd just demolished. The public humiliation was almost worse than the private betrayal. The engagement was everywhere: tech blogs, social media, even a small write-up in a business magazine. Tech's newest power couple, Reynolds, and marketing guru Carter to wed. No mention that he'd been in a long-term relationship with someone else just days before. I was erased, not just from his future, but from his narrative entirely. Friends, mostly mutual ones from the industry, started choosing sides. Most chose his. Money and power have a gravity all their own, and people get pulled into orbit around success. Messages stopped coming, invitations dried up. People I thought were my friends suddenly couldn't meet for coffee. It was like I'd committed some terrible social faux pas by being the one left behind. The worst moment came at a coffee shop. Ironically, the same chain where we'd first met. I was waiting in line when I overheard two women talking. "Did you see Reynolds Energy's founder got engaged?" one said. "Yeah," replied the other. "They're perfect together. Both so successful. Power couple goals." I stood there, invisible, listening to strangers validate the relationship that had destroyed mine. 3 weeks after the photo surfaced, Marcus called. He wanted to clear the air. We met at a restaurant, neutral territory, public enough that neither of us could make a scene. He'd brought paperwork, a non-disclosure agreement, financial compensation in exchange for my silence about our relationship. "For both our sakes," he said, "my investors are conservative. The board wouldn't understand." I stared at him across the table. This man I thought I knew better than anyone. His familiar face now belonged to a stranger. The boy with worn shoes and big dreams was gone, replaced by this calculated businessman who saw me as a liability to manage. In that moment, I realized something profound. I hadn't just lost my boyfriend or my future, I'd lost my own story. While I was helping write his success story, I'd stopped writing my own. "I gave you everything," I said quietly. "My time, my support, my heart." "And I'm grateful," he replied, sliding the papers toward me. "This is me showing that gratitude." I left the papers on the table. Unsigned, I walked out of that restaurant, not just walking away from Marcus, but from the version of myself who had made him the center of her universe. It was the hardest and bravest thing I'd ever done. That night, alone in what had been our apartment, which I would soon have to leave, I finally let myself feel the full weight of the betrayal. 5 years. Gone. The future I'd imagined. Gone. The man I thought I knew. Gone. I sobbed until my body ached, until there were no tears left. Rock bottom has a clarity all its own. When you've lost everything, you finally see what remains. And what remained was me. Just me. Broken, betrayed, but still breathing. They say rock bottom is a foundation. You can't sink any lower, so the only direction left is up. For weeks after I walked out of that restaurant, leaving Marcus's papers unsigned, I didn't believe that. I couldn't see up, down, or any direction at all. I just existed in a fog of grief and betrayal. I had to move out of the apartment. I couldn't afford it on my own, and every corner held memories I couldn't bear to face. I found a small studio across town, nothing fancy, nothing like the penthouse, but mine. Completely mine. The first night there, surrounded by boxes and bare walls, I sat on the floor and cried. Not for Marcus this time, but for the woman who had disappeared while loving him. Where had she gone? Who had I become? The first change was small. I deleted my social media accounts, not just to avoid seeing Marcus and Vanessa, but to stop measuring my life against carefully curated highlight reels. Then I called my old mentor from nursing school, the one I'd lost touch with while consumed by Marcus's world. "I need to remember who I am," I told her when we met for coffee. She didn't ask questions. She just listened, really listened, something I hadn't experienced in years. It's strange how healing starts in unexpected ways. For me, it began with routine. Waking up, going to work, coming home. Simple acts without the constant interruption of Marcus's needs and crises. In the quiet of my own company, I started to hear my own thoughts again. I started journaling, pouring out all the pain, the regrets, the anger. Some days I wrote letters to Marcus I would never send. Other days I wrote to myself, apologies for losing sight of my own worth. 3 months after the breakup, I ran into one of Marcus's investors at a hospital fundraiser. He recognized me. "Ah, Marcus's friend, right?" he said, searching for the right word. I took a deep breath. "No," I replied. "I'm Jasmine Taylor. I'm a healthcare administrator who helped build Reynolds Energy from the ground up without ever getting credit. And I'm not anyone's friend, I'm my own person." The words came out clear and strong. I felt something shift inside me, pride replacing shame. That night, I applied to a healthcare management program I'd been putting off for years. All those nights I'd spent helping Marcus with his business plan, I could have been working on my own. All that energy I'd poured into his dreams could have been fueling mine. It wasn't too late to change that. 6 months post-breakup, I saw their wedding announcement in the business section of the local paper. I'd expected pain, but what I felt instead was something closer to pity. Not for myself, but for them. Their relationship was built on a foundation of lies and betrayal. What kind of marriage would grow from that soil? I closed the paper and went to my management class, where I was developing a business plan for a community health initiative I actually believed in. The transformation wasn't overnight. Healing never is. There were still nights I cried myself to sleep, days when a song or a smell would trigger memories that cut deep, moments of doubt when I wondered what she had that I didn't. But those moments became less frequent, less intense. I was rebuilding myself, brick by brick. 1 year after the Instagram post that shattered my world, I was presenting my community health initiative to potential investors. As I stood at the podium, confident in my research, passionate about my vision, I realized something profound. I had never needed Marcus to succeed. I had always had everything I needed within me. He hadn't been the visionary in our relationship, I had. I saw potential in him before anyone else did. I recognized value where others didn't. That same vision, turned inward, was now guiding me toward a future I was creating on my own terms. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was now the one seeking investors, the one with the business plan, the one with the dream. But unlike Marcus, I didn't need to step on anyone to reach my goals. My success wouldn't come at the cost of someone else's heart. The most unexpected part of healing was the gratitude that eventually emerged. Not for the betrayal, I'll never be thankful for that cruelty, but for the freedom that came after. Without realizing it, I had been living in the shadow of Marcus's ambitions, dimming my own light to make his shine brighter. Now, I was standing in my own sunshine, and it felt glorious. Today, my community health initiative serves over 2,000 low-income patients. I have a team of dedicated professionals who share my vision. I have friends who know my worth because I know it first. And yes, I eventually found love again. The kind built on mutual respect and shared growth, not sacrifice and erasure. But that's a different story. The most important relationship I rebuilt wasn't with a new partner, but with myself. I had to learn to trust my instincts again, to believe in my own value, to recognize red flags instead of painting them green with excuses. I had to forgive myself for staying too long, for accepting too little, for forgetting my own dreams. Sometimes I wonder if Marcus ever thinks about me. If in quiet moments, between board meetings and investor calls, he remembers the woman who believed in him when no one else did. The woman who held him through failure and celebrated his first success before anyone knew his name. I wonder if he ever realizes what he threw away. Not just my love, but the authenticity of a relationship built from nothing. I saw him once, about 2 years after everything fell apart, at a healthcare innovation conference where my community initiative was being recognized. Our eyes met across the crowded room, and for a split second, I saw something flash across his face. Recognition, regret. It was gone before I could name it. He nodded slightly. I nodded back. Then I turned my attention to the people who were there to support the work I was doing. Work that mattered, work that healed instead of hurt. Later, I heard through mutual connections that his marriage to Vanessa lasted less than 3 years. Creative differences, they called it publicly. Trust issues, people whispered privately. I felt no satisfaction in their failure, only a quiet understanding that relationships built on shaky foundations rarely stand the test of time. The hardest lesson I learned through all of this wasn't about Marcus, it was about myself, about how easily we can lose ourselves in someone else's story, how dangerous it is to make someone else's dreams more important than our own, how loving someone should never mean becoming invisible. I used to think that love was measured by what you were willing to sacrifice. Now I know that real love doesn't ask for sacrifice. It makes space for growth. Real love sees you, celebrates you, makes room for your dreams alongside its own. Real love doesn't dim your light to make someone else shine brighter. It adds its glow to yours, creating something more brilliant than either could be alone. My life now isn't perfect. I still have insecurities. I still make mistakes. But the difference is that I no longer apologize for taking up space in my own story. I no longer shrink myself to make others comfortable. I no longer accept anything less than the respect and recognition I deserve. The woman who gave her heart to Marcus doesn't exist anymore. She's been replaced by someone stronger, wiser, more compassionate, even toward herself, especially toward herself. And while I wouldn't wish the pain of betrayal on anyone, I can't regret the woman it helped me become. So if you're watching this, if my story feels familiar, if you're pouring yourself into someone who treats your love as optional, please hear me. Your heart is too precious to give to someone who doesn't recognize its value. Your dreams are too important to set aside for someone who won't make room for them. Your life is too short to spend it being someone's stepping stone. Love shouldn't cost you yourself, and the person who truly deserves your heart will never ask you to sacrifice your worth to prove your love. They'll see your value without you having to diminish yourself to show it. Sometimes the love story you need most is the one with yourself. It's learning to stand alone rather than settling for standing behind someone. It's recognizing that you are enough, not because someone else validates you, but because you finally see your own worth clearly. I gave Marcus my heart, and he gave his last name to another woman. But in losing him, I found myself. And that, in the end, was the greatest love story of all. Your heart is too precious to give to someone who treats it as optional. Value yourself enough to walk away from half-love. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message today. And remember, sometimes the love story you need most is the one with yourself.